Today I'm open my tab. Hi, welcome to DevKami. My name is Swimming,
I am Tristan.
and Chiliang is sick today as usual. And damn it, I have to open a new Firefox window to do some news thing today
Mm.
because I forget to upgrade my Chrome through my OS. Oh well. Okay, so today is 290 episode and it's a prime number for once. So I'm going to share screen because after 1 week of personal strategy, I decided to start an episode today. Okay, cool. So let's start with our news. Uh, Last week, actually, okay, we have tech up until August, so they're starting here. But one event that will happen next month is actually, do you know about the GDG meetup?
No, I haven't heard of it. Are they back?
So yeah, they have the Google I/O event. Their Google I/O event. It's sold out within 20 minutes. It's sold out faster than Taylor Swift ticket in Singapore, by the way. So I wonder if this it should be correct because this page is Dev. It's a reasonably new. Oh, they're so bad. So either way, if you manage to get a ticket, the event is happening. They also have one in Georgetown. I don't think it's that worth it to go. They tend to do it in Penang Science Center. It's not a science center. It's more like a makerspace, a government-sponsored science education thing, which feature makerspace. For Google side, they are really really bad. But there's a Google I/O extended in Malaysia. Google uh,
Is the website
Google
loading
I/O.
because loading slow
It's not
because people
loading.
are
It's
still
not
trying
loading.
to? Okay,
No,
yeah,
it's
because people are still trying to buy tickets. Like they
no.
have a
The
bot
ticket
like
sold
trying
out
to.
within 15 minutes, 2 months back.
Mm.
Sorry, 2 weeks back actually.
Yeah,
GDDKL
maybe
ticket.
someone forgot to turn off the bot to
Yeah.
to buy
Either
tickets.
way, so that happens, and I think that's about it really. Then we have PyCon. The big one is PyCon in Malaysia. So yep, there's a Google I/O extended in Kuala Lumpur. So it featured a few of our people, but the ticket sold out lah within 15 minutes. It's 8 July, so next week.
Mm.
No, the week
Mm.
after next week. So yeah, it's a bit crazy. In fact, the place is big too. It's all the way in the. Have you been through? Have you been through the TM auditorium in Bangsa South? Not Bangsa South. KL Central.
Yeah, I think so. I think Google used to have an office there, right? They still have
Yeah,
an
yeah.
office. Yeah,
They
so
have
they
their
had an
office there,
event.
but
Yeah, they had events
the
there.
event space is small. Their event space is very small. They have a bigger event space for classes and all that, but it used to be small. But I think this time they actually do it in auditorium, Axiata Tower. Okay, this is very small, but they
Mm.
used to have a smaller place. They used to go to TM, which is also the same building. So that is actually a
Mm.
lot bigger. So, oh well, that's done. This Axiata Tower, okay, forget it. Okay, so this is the only event and talk about news. Actually, there's a second news I need to show you guys. Let me open that. It's very important because Tristan project is actually featured on
On where?
Citron, but I don't have the Citron TikTok account with
It's on TikTok
Instagram with
as
me
well.
now. No,
Okay,
no, it's not
I
on
thought it
TikTok. It's
was
on
on TikTok
Instagram.
because I don't have
It's
a
on
TikTok account.
Instagram.
Someone stole my username.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
Okay,
See, no, the
so
colors are
going up.
very bad because this is my living room has yellow lights, and so
Yep,
and I didn't do color correction. But it's actually, if you look at the thumbnail, that's a better color
yeah,
corrected image. So it's a
correct.
very pink inside, very
Yep,
pink middle, and then of course it's gray because I seared for the browning.
co- yep.
So
It's actually
it's
you
quite
can
good.
see the
It's
pink
quite
lah.
yeah, it's very nice. It's very, what do you call this? It's very soft and juicy. It's like what medium
Correct,
rare steak should taste like in restaurants.
correct. But we'll talk more about that after this. So let's go to the news lah. So the first actual news is So even though it's 2 weeks since, but it's pretty much a slow news day for the past 2 weeks, in my opinion. So I managed to squeeze up quite a lot of stuff either way. So the first one is these days Malaysian insurance service. So the Malaysian okay. So nowadays insurance company are actually going for digitalization. It's actually a big deal because for once they are allowed to bypass agents and do their own service, right? So as a result, that the first thing they do is they start uh, web services lah. But knowing that these people are financial companies, not really that good, and movie is actually one of those services by one of the big insurance company that I don't remember the name, but they got hacked. And my sir actually give advisory to actually watch your transaction and all that lah, because the company actually being exploited by ransomware.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's
So what do you
prevented.
mean by hack? The website was hacked, or was it like some kind of spoofing by, sorry, like a social engineering thing where someone
I don't
called
know.
the, hey, I need my password reset and those things, and someone
I don't
pretended to
know.
be a colleague.
Okay, so my cert, the Malaysian cybersecurity organization. Okay, cybersecurity Malaysia runs the
Ah, so it's a
service one team. Yeah, they released this lah. So they found a vulnerability that based on transfer could escalate the privilege and environment. So you have an environment, uh, take protect your transfer environment. So it's
yeah. I
about
don't I don't
transformation.
understand how SQL injection is still a thing
A thing,
when you
right?
all
Correct.
like all your frameworks, well, proper frameworks are actually doing SQL injection proof queries by default. It's like it really, you really have to circumvent the framework in order to allow SQL injection. I think we've talked about this
Correct.
before and on the security things, right? So
Correct. Correct.
yeah, it's a very yeah, it really, I don't know how the rest of how, yeah, and everyone else had like people who were building the ones that have SQL injections are still not
Yeah.
keeping up with the security. Like
Correct. So
SQL
this is
injections, like the only way you can really do it is if you're concatenating strings, and
correct.
yeah, that's just not how we do things in 2023.
Correct. So either way, this happens. Be careful about the services. For user, this a lot of it is by the service provider, but as a user, just make sure you watch your transfer for your insurance services and all that lah. So it's yeah, it's bad. So this happens. This is a big one. The next big one is actually this one. I don't remember talking about this one. Oh, and there's also another one, but you forget about that. About that. Okay, so this 30 day around the times that thing happened. So they actually reduced the price for cost for the service, but the big one is actually function calling. What does it mean? Developer documentation I read. So what it does is you can actually tie a function to your OpenAI SDK. So as a result, so here's a good example. Do I need to make it bigger? No, should be
No,
fine.
I think it's fine if
Okay,
if someone
so
goes on full screen, it's good enough.
correct. It's linked on our page anyway. So this is a custom function that get weather, for example. All right. So the conversation here, this is actually how you call it. This is a standard thing that you do using OpenAI API. You provide a function, tell them the thing you do, set up the right parameters and all that, right? Then you pass the parameter, the function, you pass the function's parameter as JSON into the OpenAI SDK with a message. Then you can tie the
Hmm.
message to a function. So in a way, in a way, this is exactly like remote procedure call. So what remote procedure call is really the serialize your parameters definition sometime across the network so that both sides get it, and then you send the serialized data that said I want this function to with this parameter. It's the same thing actually. I just find it interesting that they wrote their own, so to say, and you just tie your function to a OpenAI response law. So this
Mm-hmm.
can be very useful in, let's say, okay, in more practical form, I want you to imagine things like, let's say you talk about SQL injection, but let's say you do have a special SQL query to query some data, or more realistically, function through your ORM. Then you can actually potentially use this to tie to this to talk to your database for data out, like for CRM
Yeah.
and all. So the previous way to do this is actually called LangChain. So you essentially
Mm-hmm.
have function and bind together and all that. So OpenAI provide another way if you want to use LangChain. So this to me is pretty interesting, dangerous but interesting. Uh, so yeah, lah. Anything you want to add?
No, no.
But this is one of those things I want to talk. I like to talk about this kind of tools. A lot of these tools are not are very cool, but it's only useful when you can tie it to your own environment.
Well,
And that,
a lot of things are like that. Like, so what if you can blink LEDs, right?
correct,
It doesn't make sense by itself, but once you tie it to
correct,
something else, then it makes sense.
correct. So, for example, for if you're not a engineer, so I have an example. So let's say recently the weather is very crazy. So maybe I can use an Arduino, find out the protocol for this remote control. Then I can do an automation, right? So it's one of those
Mm.
things that we learn Arduino for. So there's context for it. So that's how you do the real work. Software is a bit more clearer among software engineers. We have a lot of our real work is actually our software environment, and the integration is another story, lah. So yeah, I think you should explore it now. There's a lot more reason to explore it. What I do not know whether LangChain actually have this right now. Give me a second because this is actually a pretty old thing actually. Da-da-da, Korean, da-da-da, Python guy. Let's do Python because that's my language. Okay, they probably had it built in somewhere, but previously you don't have to. Previously, you don't have to do that because what LangChain does is you pass data to a chain of thing, then you had a Python function or whatever language, you just pass it in by default. So this one is officially supported by OpenAI. AI. And that's about it. So the next thing, uh, RobotCat is actually a self-improving robot agent. This is mostly a paper, and this does is it's actually the ability to actually use a AI agent, so to say, to actually improve robotics performance. So, for example, so let's say you had a robot to plug orange. Okay, orange. First round you don't get it, so you need to train it and train it again and train it again. So this is actually one of those multimodal model that use visual cue and all that to actually specialize on these tasks because
Mm-hmm.
uh, this low level task, so to say, is actually very hard for robots, and to train them you cannot program that. People tried that in the 60s. It's worked horribly. Neural network changed things significantly, but those days neural network is too slow until recently. So you have that, then you have but the thing about that is not just plugging neural network work because viewer robotics. So reinforcement learning as a model actually exists for a long time, right? Reinforcement learning means you run your network live and they learn on the fly. So previously you
Mm-hmm.
have learning in a way that you have to retrain. You have to take your model offline, or actually you just have a copy of the model and retrain it. Then you replace the model. Reinforcement learning actually gives you the ability to learn on the fly, and reinforcement learning is the secret sauce for machine that play Go, machine that play computer game, Atari and all that, right? Those are trained with reinforcement learning. Chess,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, is using Minimax. Chess is, I believe, is actually uh, okay the until the neural network model. It used to be Minimax and all that. Also,
Yeah, but in it's like how tic tac toe is the same, right? It's computationally feasible to
correct,
get all of the branches.
correct.
like at least with the
So
current technology. So you don't need to
no,
do learning because you can just
yes,
compute like what is the best move given
correct.
this position in the board. Same as
Tic-tac-toe
tic tac toe.
solved in the 60s.
Yeah.
Tic-tac-toe is solved in the 60s, and it's a proof that Minimax as a model work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people actually use Minimax as a model until Deep Blue. Then they realized that Go is impossible using Minimax. The state is just too big. As a result, they just go with patterns lah. So reinforcement learning is one of those things, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Chess also have shortcut because they got playbooks and all that. And Ken Thompson, the creator of Unix, actually wrote a notation to make it the state easy to map and all that. So chess is a long time work. Go is different, but this one is for robotics, and reinforcement learning previously is within the old software environment easy because it's software. Robotics harder because what do you measure? Which is why you got this thing called multi-model input, meaning you can use visual sense on board sensor and all that, but they also can do simulation. So you can imagine that they think about how to move things. So unfortunately, this is a paper. I do not know how useful it is for us now because Google themselves had their own robotics platform, which they do sell, by the way, but they
Google.
use a lot on this lah.
I thought it was Boston Dynamics that was like at the forefront of these kinds of stuff.
Uh, Boston Dynamics is the forefront because they do it very early on. Google did bought a robotic arm company for this kind of thing. Boston Dynamics
Mm.
have tendency to be a bit more secretive about their algorithms and all that. Though you can actually get SDK. Let me find it. SDK. So what's the robot name again? Spot SDK.
I forgot. Yeah.
This one. They do have an SDK, but but behind the scene, a lot of their stuff is a bit secretive. You can use
Mm.
Spot SDK and you can add sensor to the payload. And using Python again because it's a machine learning language for some reason, you just can control a robot lah. So yeah, so that's one thing. Anything right? If not, I'm going to move on.
No.
I'm going to move on. This one, auto label. So auto labeling is very interesting. So a lot of people know that I work
I
for
thought you were working on this. No?
no. Okay,
Are you
so
not working on
yes
this?
and no. We do not work on text yet. Maybe in the future.
Mm.
Uh, so this is a model. What they claim is this actually helps you to produce clean and produce label for text. So meaning you're actually talking about books, article, and what kind of article it is. It is a financial article. Given this sentence, do you buy or sell a stock, for example? So in this kind of task, image is not quite there yet. Image we have some zero shot learning model now, but it's not as good yet because, uh, for example, they do not know what is a piggy bank, and they may confuse this piggy bank with a soup can, for example, right? Machine
Mm-hmm.
learning model is not quite there yet. Text might still work because text is heavily trained. So this is what this auto label does. This does is using large language model. They try to generate label for text. So what this text is about, negative, positive, and all that. But this is not an impressive model because large language model like GPTs and all that can already easily use to do sentiment analysis.
So what
Uh,
are they doing different then?
no, no, this is not good. This is not a good demo. What is the better
Mm.
demo is what kind of car is this? Given that this is the model name, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the more interesting one, and this is what they claim they can do lah. And I think it's useful, right? It
Mm-hmm.
may not be useful now, but it's useful for let's say support. When you say that, okay, do you when people ask this kind of question, you need to tag with you need to label this with this is a support issue on which product, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so this is very useful. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting there. So with that, I'm going to move on. This stuff that we already talk, really talk, really talk, really talk, really talk, really talk. Then we go on the next one. Uh, I have multiple LLM stuff. I'm going to skip that. I will be, you know what? I'm going to talk about that either way because it's right there. Okay. This is actually also an old article by A16Z. This is actually talking about how do you. Oh, the internet is slow for some reason. Yeah.
What does A16Z mean? Oh, it's the Andreson Horowitz
The VC firms.
number
Yeah.
of letters
So this
between.
actually this is actually talking about how your language model application will work. So
Mm-hmm.
things that you should learn for this is you need to know about your data pipeline. Okay, they just refuse to resize the image. You need to know the data pipeline. That's how you take your data from scraping or whatever in. Then you need to turn it into embeddings, numbers that neural network can use. Then you need to store it in a vector database, PG vector or one of those fancy one around. You, apparently, it's possible for you to put vector on a Redis if you just for processing, then serialize it later.
Mm-hmm.
Then you just put on your orchestration. This is the standard stuff. Orchestration, so they can have like API. You can make API and all that, or you can have playground. Playground exists so that you can do your own QA. As in, you just play around, exploratory testing. That's what it does. Only then you integrate it with your application. But before you got application, you got your LLM cache. This is all the this part is the LLM that people talk about often. So this part is the cache logging and all that validation. The behind
Mm-hmm.
is the LLM engine, the API, the server if you use it, etc. So then you integrate it to your application. In this case, it could be LangChain, LangChain or Vercel or whatever that you need lah. So when people talk about LLM application, they talk about the bottom right part, the LLM cat, the LLM API, all that. But the top part is very important because you need to convert your document into embedding models, vector database, and all that. It's only then you can put your data into your LLM infrastructure on the bottom right. Then only then you can send it to your application on the bottom left. So
Mm.
this is if you care about building a large language model application.
But why are they doing such like an indirect way of doing
Uh,
things? Is there like an
this
advantage of doing it?
No, this is the scalable way, right? If
Mm.
what I would do instead is I would treat okay, give me a while. I would treat embedding model vector database into one object that integrate with the LLM API directly. You can do that actually. Then all the logging is validation. This is standard stuff. Just plug it to your test tools and test cases, right?
Yeah.
So you don't need the orchestration tools in the middle. Those are like your machine and all that. You can just use your language and all that. It's of course can easily simplify, right? So the bottom half and one side is like one block, and you just like then here you just talk to the database, for example, or you maybe an API backend, etc. So you don't actually need to go to such a convoluted way because, for example, you don't actually care about playground, you may not care about playground, you may not care about the API plugins. It's helpful for you to do like open AI and stuff, but Zapier and all that is useful, but it's not that important. Maybe certain project may require it because you build project for it, but otherwise, yeah, it's standard in a way that the only thing that is new for some probably is the embedding generation part, the embedding models and the vector database, and of course the
Mm.
LLM API. So that's about it really. Your pipeline for data can easily be just like you just build a server and receive the stuff in. Is it scalable? No. You probably want a queue, but you can make do without it until you realize that you don't need it, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
can take a few shortcuts to deliver to speed things up. There's consequences, but so is this. You probably don't have the
So
best.
is it like the microservices question or? Like,
Yeah,
do you just connect everything, or do you want to?
this is very microservice like actually. This is very microservice like, which I think is a bit overkill lah. But as usual, we put the link here. Uh, Here they also talk about things like how do you use it, design pattern like in context learning, what to learn about, uh, uh, then data process embedding, how do you integrate your application, your own data, etc., etc. Right? So yeah, with ahead, this actually teach you how it worked in a way, not the full picture, but very high level image for you to have some idea. Okay, I'm going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a workbook for AI system, the claim. So essentially, what this does is this is actually a set of things that you can use to integrate a large language model to build content, explore data, and whatnot. Think of it like a notebook. So this helps you
Like a
decode.
Jupyter notebook.
Correct.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm gonna move on this. GPT engineer, yet another assistant, so to say. Except what this one claim is that they actually refine the question. So that's what they claim.
Mm. What do you mean refine the
So this,
question?
they were asked,
Like what?
they asked more clarification before building the solution. So this is one
Mm.
thing they claim lah. So let's see whether the video shows something. So specific. Okay, so mm,
What is it doing?
this is
Oh, it's
writing
doing
the
the
question.
prompt. Mm.
Yeah, correct. So then they will ask for clarification. Again, a lot of this is a lot of claims. How well it works to a project is not really known. For example, right? But it's there. They generate the code, they generate all that. Again, a lot of things they claim. How well it works to a project, that is you have to try yourself, right? It may or may not work.
Mm-hmm.
But this, so one of the claim of this one compared to other project is this one asks for clarification. This is the main thing actually. And this also works with Python. A lot of the large language model works on JavaScript, which is also fine because that's the biggest thing that people build. So yeah, just another one that you should check lah. Then I'm going to move on this one. Do you use UID key in PostgreSQL?
I guess not. Well, it will. The application that is usually not that large to require performance like UUID.
So I make this mistake. It's not a bad thing because our data is still small. Uh, I use UID for everything because it's cheap in code in a way. Yeah, the query is not that slow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's also here's one thing. The UID when it's random, so you don't get correlation, which is actually a very valid concern. And also one of the things that this article measure is that using UID can be slower, right? It takes 2 times. So user ID is like 500 milliseconds, user is 1,000 milliseconds, so it's twice the speed for such a big size, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is ways around it. For example, what it suggests is that you should group the data closer and all that. So you should use a UID v7, for example. Uh, so there's caveat lah, but yeah, this give a very good point about using UUID to build your to build your ID. It's
Oh, why,
not
why would you decide it up front? Like, you're not the usual um,
uh,
cases. It's just incrementing, right? A monotonic incrementing
I feel like yeah,
key.
mine not
Why would you
because
switch to a UUID? Like,
uh,
what would be the thing that
okay,
makes you
so
switch to that?
no, it's not a switch. It's just that first idea. Okay, how do I
Oh,
guarantee
because you have to switch your primary key. You can't have two. You have to have one that you have to refer to. Otherwise, it becomes confusing. Like, which primary
correct?
ID are you referring to?
Correct. Because at that time the application I'm not using a framework, so to say. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not using a framework because I'm using, okay, the closest thing to a framework is serverless, okay,
Mm-hmm.
uh, as in AWS Lambda. In this case, AWS Lambda really encourage you to write arbitrary function without any framework. In fact, you want to integrate Lambda to a framework, it's a bit of a pain, really, for example. So you
Mm-hmm.
can do it. You just add an entry point to your favorite language and all that. You can do it, not a problem. But it's just that the code get convoluted really fast and don't get a lot of stuff. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to use a bad thing anyway at that time. And at that time, I also use what's the thing called, SQL Alchemy. SQL Alchemy does not decide that I need a ID, a primary key, okay? Because by default, your database, your create table, you do not need to define a primary key, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You can
Yeah.
make do without it. So
Yes, of course.
PostgreSQL is both advanced in the way that they provide a high level enough abstraction to load enough code, and they're also low level enough in the way that they know that if you don't care about UID, they just don't do it. So you just bear your own consequence lah. So at that time,
Mm.
I need something uniqueness, guaranteed, and all that, right? And also, we are sharing database with another service that refuse another database that refused to be moved at that time. So I decided UID to guarantee consistency across service law, and that's the only reason really. It's not a smart reason. I can admit that, but it's not too bad actually because the data set is small. Because the slowest thing that we got query is a lot of data. It's stupidly
Well,
bad amounts data, but it's not too bad actually, right? It's just that lah. It's not a great decision. I admit it, but it's not the worst lah. It's not great. But it's not the worst. So performance wise, it's not really great lah, right? And also, another thing I was thinking that yeah, I'm going to use I'm going to use integer. Then I'm going to make sure that long in and all that.
mm.
Don't take all that. Just pick a string. You know what I mean? Because PostgreSQL
Mm.
have native UID support. Just use that lah. It's really just
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like if you have those built into the database, then you use it.
Yeah.
You have incrementing, automatic incrementing, like auto increment. So you should just use that by default. If you
Correct.
need something that's actually unique, that is guaranteed to be unique. Like auto increment is also
Yeah,
optimized in
not
Postgres to
really.
be fast.
Uh, Not really in a way that yeah, it is fast. It is fast. The uniqueness in the way that people are play around with the code. It's don't yeah, but you are right. On hindsight, yeah,
Well,
it's
if you're
easy.
computing the ID outside of the database, then I think you're doing something wrong. Like you let the
Right.
database figure out the ID, like
And
what's happening there.
you would think that I actually use I actually use this right. The whole reason is because originally when I designed the application originally is because PostgreSQL have native UID support, and that's about it. Okay, right? So it's
Yeah.
easy to
Well, still, in that case, it like the way you do it is to have a if you want uniqueness across services divided
yeah.
in the network, then you have a central single source of truth that says this is the
Uh-huh.
ID. So that is where the database lives. You probably run it as a trigger or some kind
Correct,
of like
correct,
an insert. It auto creates the UUID and then it
correct,
says
correct,
this is the ID for everyone else.
correct. But at the time when I took over the project,
Mm,
okay, I didn't I take over the part of maintenance. The design is really bad in a way that there's no central source of truth. Okay,
mm.
so yeah, this is a mess that I usually talk about. So either way, there's a performance. If you opt to use UID, there's performance consequences. Take note of this yourself. So I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
So
like figure out first why you would want a UUID. Most of the applications
correct,
that you're going to be using don't need a UUID. There are very, very special cases when you need it. Like if you need like the same number but you cannot communicate
yeah,
across. Like let's say something is
correct,
offline, you need to generate a UUID that needs to be unique and it needs to be
correct,
the same as some other machine that you can only connect once a week, for example.
correct,
then
correct,
that's like you generate a UID. But
correct.
if all of your services are connected and they have like near real time communication, then you don't need
Yes,
to do those things.
correct.
Like you're just making
Yeah,
life difficult.
not it's not too bad actually. It's not too bad actually uh, because I say right. Generation is it's a generation is native on PostgreSQL. It's not fast, but
Hmm.
it's native. And the framework that I use, for example, SQL Alchemy support it by default. Know what I mean? Django supported by
Hmm.
default, so there is not much of a pain point. Here's the problem, right? The problem is on me actually is that I didn't notice that the JavaScript people do not have this kind of support, and I have to support language. I At that time there's people that insist on JavaScript only application, so that's where things get weird really fast, law.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the issue really, but that's on me. So that's it. Let's move on. This one. What do you know about?
No, I don't know
What do
this
you know
page at
about
all.
Minitel? What do you know about
No,
Minitel? Okay,
nothing.
okay, so in the US there is the
It's a
ARPANET.
terminal. Is it
Correct.
TTY? No.
It's not TTY at all. So around the same time when the United States creating the ARPANET, connecting the academic network, right? The French create their own standard called the Minitel. Okay, it's their own service. Unlike the academic network, ARPANET is designed for testing network reliability and all that. Minitel is built for service delivery. So which is meaning they are built precisely like web applications to say. You're building application to serve a service. So it's an online service in the 960 on their own computer. So this technology died for a long time, but somebody just like it because it's nostalgia, so they built one. Lor. So this actually at that time the French have their own internet, so to say. Then the British have their
Mm.
own thing called the teletext. Teletext is different. It's not a computer. Teletext is actually a television technology. They have some processor thingy, but it primarily work across television. The French have something closer. The Minitel is what the French have is closer to internet that we know about. So yeah, it's a video text internet. They have their own computer and all that. Uh, then it died lah. Uh, it retired service in 2012, right? 2012. So they have their own business model and their own technology. So because of nostalgia, somebody actually built this on ESP32 with C++ and interface card with Minitel. So yeah, interesting technology, and that's about it lah. So anything to add? If
Mm.
not,
No.
and this is a computer science bootcamp with the cover. This is actually some of the courses online that you can use, and that's about it. So that's it. Let's talk about your project.
Mm.
Anything?
Well, you've
Anything?
seen it already. I don't really have anything much. Maybe what you can do is you can take a look at the code, and then that might be something that you might want to see,
Where
because
can I
all of
find it?
the it's on the YouTube
Okay,
video.
YouTube, right? Let me add this. Let me reopen the YouTube again. Da-da-da. So the only thing that is update for me, wait, this is important. Let me open up my QJCTL graph. It's important Firefox. Oh no, blah, blah, blah.
What is important?
Okay. Oh, I was trying to copy some output. I want to remap the YouTube video, this video,
Mm.
uh, and I want to remap this video, the audio for this video into into Firefox
No, I
again.
mean you can just put it on the link, and then people can just like play it
Yeah,
themselves. Like there's not.
okay, correct, right? Okay, doesn't
I
matter. I
think
just
it's
want the
fine.
sound really. Yeah.
Yeah.
here's on GitHub.
You can take a, yeah. There are some pictures as well of the schematic and all the code.
Correct.
I mean, yeah. See, the picture there is a lot better than
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
video because this one is
Correct.
like less dark.
Yep.
It's still the white
So
balance is still off. See, it's a bit yellow. So
yep.
because I have yellow lights.
Correct. So this is the schematic, Pico and all that. So yeah, it's a pretty cool design, and you
Circuit
use
Python. So Circuit
so,
Python is not very good for
uh,
these things. Like it's
yeah,
super slow.
correct. It's not
Booting
fast.
is like already slow. I
Correct.
mean, it's fast, but once you do lots of things at the same time, it
Hmm.
becomes like it doesn't do it well. So,
Correct.
like the request, like what I was asking you on Slack, right? The requests, for example, blocks. I have no idea how to make it not block, and apparently they
Correct.
still have to support async IO on requests. So that means if you have a slow network, then you're waiting for the response to either fail or to complete, and so that your whole thing is your whole program is locked there. It's still using like
Correct.
some for some reason, it's because Pi Pico is a dual core. It's still using a single
Yeah.
core, so it's not
Correct.
not yeah, delegating it to to a different core and just having it wait to come back. I don't know. Yeah, but if you go to the very end, that's like where the main thing. So this is just like all
Right.
of your tasks. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so you see, I have a lot of tasks here.
All of that
Yeah,
explains.
if
Yeah.
you scroll down at the very bottom, right? Like, well, because I need it to be happening all at the same time. Like, I don't want
Correct.
to
Correct.
sleep on things and then keep on checking. So just let async IO figure it out, like when to check.
Correct.
Like when that processor is free, then do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the thing. When once you start using the encoder, everything is slower because now your encoder is very quite fast. Like it's firing a lot of events, and so the
Yeah.
but once you stop, I mean, you only do it to set the temperature anyway. But once you stop, then everything is fine. But then, yeah, then the relay triggers. So you send a Wi-Fi request, and everything stops again. So it wasn't that fun, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I should have gone MicroPython instead. But I guess it's the same. I
No,
didn't want to go
Python talks
for
about this.
Arduino. Yeah, I didn't want to go for like Arduino or C or Embed OS because I didn't have
Yeah.
enough time to like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
do things there,
Correct.
like find out like the drivers, etc. At least in Circuit Python, all of the drivers are already available.
Correct. And also, I mean, in theory, it will work well in a way. If you got the time to build it, it will be they got the first in class support, so to say, right? So you will get the best support for this kind of thing, but you also have to deal with a lot of low level stuff. That's a lot of the workload.
Well,
Uh,
there's not actually a lot of low level here. Like the only protocols I'm using is I squared C and one wire.
mhm,
That's the I'm probably like, yeah, I squared C for the OLED and then one wire for the temperature. The rotor encoder is really just like, I mean, it's just a wrapper function, but it's really just checking like the edge of the signals, right? Like your clock and your delta,
correct.
and like just to figure out what direction the rotor is moving. But aside from that, there's nothing else.
And
Like
async
there's
IO
Wi-Fi, of course,
on
but then that's
yeah,
by the SDK.
async IO on standard Python is actually a greenlet on one one interpreter. So it's actually a green thread, right? It's not another
Mm-hmm.
process. Uh, in the full-blown Python, to use another CPU core is to use multi-processing. The reason is because that actually spawn another process, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
process will use the extra core
Well,
of the operating system.
I don't know
For that,
about process because that means you won't be able to share memory because like I need to share memory because of the state. Like I'm changing state and I need
yeah,
it so that it's
correct.
atomic so that we don't have any lockups.
Correct. Uh, so the Python implementation on the language, what happened is because it's greenlet. Greenlet does not mean greenlet does not mean no GIL. Uh, it does mean that things are released quickly. That's what they claim. That's what
Mm-hmm.
Async IO claim, and that's about it. I actually do a Okay, let me see if I managed to show my presentation. This is actually a presentation I show to my coworker on concurrency model. Let me see if I can find it. Uh, so the reason I have that is because one of the project actually have one of my project actually have using thread, but we use thread for another reason. Let me see if they have that. I may not have that because this is like 4 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Process, threads, coroutine. So grid async IO is actually a form of coroutine actually. So they just like do next, 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 next. They try to do
Yeah,
it as fast as
which
possible.
is enough for me. I mean, I just need it
Yeah,
to run as fast as you can, but I apparently switching tasks is
yeah,
quite slow. So
correct. So I do
I
not
mean,
know how
it
fast it is.
works as a prototype, right?
Correct,
At least the flow I understand, and then if I ever need to reprogram it using something better, then I can still use it as a guide, like what was set, like
correct,
what were the parameters, what was the algorithm. So that was the more important one. The language is less important in the sense that you
correct,
can always rewrite it as if you know what you're doing, and I already
correct.
figured out a lot of the things in the program
Yeah.
anyway.
So no, I'm saying that yeah, and also I do not know what's the implication. I do not know what's the implication of the hardware integration with async IO if they use Greenlet. That's one thing that I'm not very clear about, right?
Mm,
So that's my thing lah. But I get it, I get it. So yeah, nice work
yeah.
by the way. It's very cool.
Yeah, well,
So
have you seen the code? I don't know. Maybe you can do a review, but or either
I
today or like anytime in the because I don't
yeah,
know if I did like Pylint was complaining a lot because I don't have document whatever
right,
documentation for every function or
right.
whatever. I just turned off
Correct.
Pylint because they were just very noisy. Uh,
Correct.
yeah, like or something like DT was not or KI or KD is not following Python conventions of snake case. Like like
Yes.
it's
Yes.
only two characters. What how do I snake like K underscore D or something? I don't know. It's like even longer.
Yeah, I
But
understand. That is weird
yeah, I
also.
just
Don't worry.
turned off
Yeah.
what they call this turn off Pylint. I think one thing that uh, many that someone who's trying out microcontrollers that has
Yeah.
been doing a lot of web programming, I think what will
Yeah.
trip them up is that you don't actually have the time available because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you're always like especially when during like web applications, right? You're always considering that oh you can always get the date and the time so that you can always like move like do
Correct.
subtractions, for example. Oh, this is the time elapsed whatever.
Mhm.
But the problem is like sure from the beginning, yeah, you have time monotone, you can continue, but what if the microcontroller resets? Then now you
Correct.
don't have the
Correct.
time
Correct.
correct. So that's one
Correct.
thing
Correct.
that can trip people up. I still haven't fixed that
Yeah.
bug because right now what's happening, sometimes it crashes because of some
Yeah.
CRC error with the temperature. It will crash. I'm trying to recover like, oh, I set the temperature to this. I have to at least start again from that temperature, and it's
Mhm.
going to balance anyway. So even if you lost 10 seconds in the in the logging or in the what do you call this in the PID control, like it's still going
Yeah.
to balance itself out. So it will recover. But the time spent, time elapsed is not saved properly because the time starts from zero again when the microcontroller resets.
Correct.
And
Correct.
even if
Correct.
you
Correct.
spent you type the, so you just need to save oh the time elapsed now, and then you have to do calculations, okay, the state, whatever. So you'll see that function definition, like try to recover from will try to
Mhm.
write the state into the SD card, and then
Yeah.
try to reset the microcontroller to recover from a crash.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is not electrically uh, robust as well. Like your I squared C will
Yeah.
sometimes uh, also crash because
Yes.
like especially if you're near a microwave. Because I'm doing it in the kitchen, right? If I do the microwave, suddenly like all of
Yeah.
your like interference happens, and then
Yes.
like yeah, it's not shielded. I'm not using shielded cables, and so it's going to
Correct.
crash, but it will recover. So that's the thing. It has recovery built in, but time is not properly computed because that's something that you will take for granted once you move into
Yes.
something like microcontrollers.
Correct. Correct. So you assume everything to low level and all that. You work long enough. You not work long enough to understand this, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah, but
yeah,
that's the thing, right? It's something that you might like, for anyone who's listening is wanting to try out microcontrollers, is like those things.
yeah.
And like this is also like in relation to what we were saying just before, like
Hmm.
by itself, like blinking LEDs doesn't mean anything, but this is exactly
Hmm.
what it is right now. Like you're just blinking
Correct.
things. It's just that you're blinking uh, a power supply, that
Correct.
but you're blinking it via feedback, and the feedback has an algorithm in it and is automating it. So that's
Correct.
that's
Correct.
tying it to the environment, but at its very root, it's still just blinking an LED. Whatever you've done
Yeah.
with blinking LEDs is applicable to this. It's just you just added on a lot of other feedback
Correct.
mechanisms, computations, algorithms, and all. A
Yes.
display, a rotor encoder, input, user input, human interface devices, and those things.
Correct. Correct. So it's all engineering is like that. You start with one basic thing, right? Then you add on top of it. Okay, I do not claim I understand mechanical engineering, but I understand Lego or technique. Okay, you start with one
Mm-hmm.
mechanism, then you add another mechanism, you bring more mechanism
Mm-hmm.
together, then you got a complex machine.
Yeah.
Software development is like this. You start with hello world, then you have conditions. Once you have conditions, then you have everything. You have print, you have conditions, you have mat operation, then you have string operation, then you integrate with operating system, then you integrate with files and all that, then you integrate with your network, then etc. Just add in
Yeah.
layers.
Which is why it's very important, like for especially for beginner software
Yeah.
developers, like if they say, oh, someone like I did this, for example, someone tells you,
Mhm.
like, and it's very simple, like don't don't try to disparage them, or like say, oh, this is
Yeah.
simple, we've seen this before, this is nothing new, because
No.
it's
Correct.
nothing new to you, but it's something new to them, and that is their foundation. Like they just
Correct.
realize that they can do something and they're proud of it.
Correct.
And the building on top of it is what's important. Like if they have a good foundation, because they know, oh, they did something, then that's good for the future. But if you've already started like talking them down, saying it's too simple, they just lose confidence and they're just not going to do anything anymore.
Correct. Correct. I have a very, yeah, precisely because the best way to do that is actually have them to try first, then ask why, right? I know as we are busy, we always have a deadline, but it's important for them to see first, right? Why? Even that it does not always applicable the same way. So a good example, very recent one. So I have okay, so I have AWS SQS had the thing called visibility timeout. I complained so many times. So you have a long running process that you cannot control the code. Deep learning thing like okay, it's a very slow process. Your it could take a minute or two, for example, right? Actually, not 30 seconds. The visibility timeout is 30 seconds. Okay, it's 30 seconds by default. You can extend it with another function. Problem. When you so I have two export function. One export function is 30 seconds. Within the 30 seconds is done. So I can just once I finish a process, I need to delete the message from the queue, SQS
Mm.
from queue and SQS. Problem is, if I don't delete the queue, then the visibility timeout will refresh and the message will be re-queued into the queue. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
understand this? So this is the problem statement lah. But I also have export that would take 2 hours. So how do you handle this? I'm gonna answer as a Ruby first.
Mm. I don't
Uh,
know.
so
I'm not
tradition,
not sure.
okay, so the traditional Python way is you use a thread. So you have this long running function, the export function that you cannot change because you don't have the code. You just a certain function is just really long. But you can have a thread that run within a function. That function can
Mm.
actually extend visibility timeout every 30 seconds when the process is still running, right?
Yeah.
So you can do this behind the scene and do that. But here's what I discovered very recently. uh, JavaScript do not have the same thing. In fact, the recommendation for you to do it JavaScript is uh, you have two worker. Worker number one, the worker number one is essentially spawn the work, spawn the work, then they just register a work to another worker. Then the worker will refresh a list of tasks.
Yeah, it's like how you would do on RTOS, because yeah, JavaScript doesn't really have threads, what you'd call threads. You'll have a
Correct,
lot of processes,
correct,
but they don't share memory.
correct,
So you'll
correct.
have like an event loop, exactly how you would do
Yeah,
like what we saw in RTOS.
but it's two different process. You have two different
Yeah,
process.
correct.
Okay,
Yes.
it's not one function.
Yeah.
So you have two different programs that you pass things to another. So
Mm-hmm.
the second program, based on the database of task list, they will update the visibility timeout as it runs, right? As it runs,
Yeah.
but uh, the main task when it's done, then they will ping back to this project and say, okay, my task is done, then I'll remove this task from the list, then I check for the rest. So
Mm-hmm.
the part of the story is different people have different foundation, which is why sometimes when I show the idea of thread to people, they just look confused. Why do I do that? Because people don't see it now. It's just that people don't have the experience. You can't assume people know the same experience or see the same thing. They just don't. So that's the moral of the story, really, because people
Mm-hmm.
have different experience, see different stuff, and
Yeah.
the, that's the
Hmm.
thing. You need people to
Yeah.
try and see why, because
Maybe you can
otherwise,
help me. Yeah, sorry, otherwise.
otherwise people just like, why you tell me this thing? They just they just feel they don't just feel bad. They probably feel resentment, and that is the worst thing, right? So you probably don't want
Mm.
that, lah. So yeah, lor.
Yeah, maybe what you can help me with is the what they call this, the class, the state class. Like
Yeah.
how do you make it better? So scroll, I think scroll down
Okay.
to the state
Down
class.
where?
Oh, sorry, yes. Scroll up. Sorry, scroll up.
State
Yeah.
class.
So see,
Up.
I just because I just you have defaults, right, in the
Yeah.
constructor, but then I have to repeat everything again in order to construct the actual class. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of
No.
repetition.
No. Because for
Like, is this a
microcontroller,
Python thing or?
no, it's a microcontroller thing in a way that you. What do you mean repeat? You mean all these thing, all these
Yeah.
init?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Python thing. It's a Python thing because
Ah.
okay, if you had a function with a lot of state, therefore you need to explicitly say it. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
because your other alternative, your other alternative is to have this thing put on the global variable, and we do not like global variable. We do not like global variable. We can do it. It just look damn ugly, and you lose track of where this function goes. So, which is why in Python you have a lot of explicitness. You don't have a choice, lah. I mean, the other way is you just encapsulate it in your data structure like Python in your dictionary and all that. But now you just
So you mean you
don't keep
just
track
put
of
it
it.
into a different file, like sweep
Yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing under the rug and so that you don't see
Correct,
it?
correct, correct. But
Okay.
if you do have that many states to keep track of, you will have to do that. In fact, a cool example is machine learning models. Sometimes they have a lot of tuning parameters, 20 of those. Okay, maybe mine got 10. Okay, not my model, the Facebook models. I'm going to show you anyway. I'm going to show you anyway. I'll give you an example, a real world example. Uh, Facebook AI, Facebook research, right? Okay, I'm going to search for a segment everything model. Here you are. Uh, it's very common, especially when you have something with a lot of state
Hmm.
predictor. Okay, this one. Da, 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 da. Do you see that? Do you see all this? Do you see
Yeah.
this?
So it's the same. It's the same thing then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just
Mm.
that for Python, we explicitly declare if you it's best for you to set some default actually, set some default and just do it like this lah. It's a Python
Yeah,
thing.
no, because you set it default because that way you don't have to set
Deal with it.
the things on when you construct the object, right?
Correct.
Like you just do
Correct.
parentheses and you have an object that's automatically constructed. But yeah, it's a bit
Correct. Tedious.
yeah, a lot. Yeah, it's also a lot of repetition. Like you just did this, then now you have to set self dot something something again.
Yeah, correct. Correct. Because Python classes, you need to assign thing to the set. It's a Python thing. I don't like this as well, but because by comparison, Java have it very clearer. It's just that the object model don't have things shared. It's just that lah. So we learn
Mm.
to deal with it, and yeah lah. I don't have good
Okay,
answer
and
for
also
this.
what I found strange is like it's for Ruby, right? Like a class method is you do it's a method on the class, but yeah, in
Correct.
Python I discovered you have to annotate the def. Like I think that I have one class method which is like if you scroll down a bit,
Correct.
you
Correct.
annotate
I
it with
know
a
this one.
class
Yeah,
method.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
like
Correct. Correct. It's I know it's just one of those things
very
that
surprising.
yeah, it's surprising. It's if you come from other OP language, that why the hell you need to do that? Because it's a old object. They simplify the object model in the last time. They don't have such thing, so they add something that wrap things around it lah. So
Mm.
because as it turns out, after somebody realized that yeah, this simplified class model, doesn't work all the time. Because sometimes you really you want some class model that work outside your classes to do stuff. It's a Python thing. I don't
No,
have good
because this
answer.
is like the usually you use class methods uh
Yeah,
in as a different constructor, right? Like this is a constructor for me. Like
correct,
it, but I couldn't
correct,
yeah, like for example, like it returns like the it returns a pre-made object that has
correct,
these values, right?
correct, correct.
Aside from the default thing, so it's something like a constructor. But yeah, from
Okay.
how it doesn't look like a constructor. Like it's just annotated
No,
class
no, no,
method. I
no,
know
no.
if you read
Uh,
Python, it's like this. But yeah,
correct.
it's not like, for example, yeah, I think Java has like you
Yes,
overload the constructor like with different
correct,
parameters, and then you have a constructor.
correct.
I think C++ also does this or something.
You know what I suspect? What I suspect is class method exists because somebody in Python discovered factory method. All right,
I don't
factory
know.
patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean
So
that's how you would do it like in object. I mean that's object orientation, right? So that those are the
correct,
patterns. You want to create an object from like differently from the default way of constructing it, then you use a different
correct,
constructor. And that's usually on
correct,
the class because the class is the blueprint of an object. And so
correct,
you create like
correct.
from something, or like usually like something like a class dot from SD card, let's say. And
The
that's
object
the object.
uh, until very recently, Python as a language is very hacker-ish. Know what I mean? It's a
Mm-hmm.
simplified language that don't have too many of the rules, and people are happily to use function to organize their code. Know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a bit like that. So the object orientation is not the strongest, and for some other from outside, it's very weird. I don't have good answer for you. It's just what it
Mm-hmm.
is. It's just something we
Yeah.
accept, right?
Yeah,
So
it was just
myself,
surprising coming from a strongly object-oriented language like
correct,
Ruby to like, I mean, I can deal with it because JavaScript says they have object orientation, but it's not really that strong as well. So there's a lot of functions as
correct,
well. I mean, there's even like a way to just write JavaScript as functional without any
correct,
objects. So there's like it's very
precisely,
broad. So like
precisely.
yeah, so trying to use classes and objects in Python is a bit different from how you're used to
Yeah,
if you're coming
correct.
from
It's
a
different.
strongly object-oriented language.
Correct. So one thing I've been teaching my junior dev is that she's asking why I'm using classes, because previously my prototype for the same code, it have global variables everywhere. I need to tell global that pass variable around. It's horrible. Okay.
Mm.
So by putting in a class with states and all that, it's a lot cleaner. So then they finally understand. So it's not strong, but it's there. Like it's there for a reason. Ideally, I'm hoping that self doesn't exist anymore. And you know what the worst part? traditionally, class, right? To get all the cool thing from other thing, you had to like inherit from object. There's a
Mm.
object class for that. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to do that anymore because you get that by default now. We used to
Well,
have
well, so you have to inherit from object. That means you can inherit from something else.
so that you get all the all the magic function from, so that you get proper object orientation behavior.
But how? So if a class does not inherit from object that time, like
I don't
what's the use of
remember.
doing it like that?
You no, you still get basic things like no, if you just use it to define one object, that is it's awesome. It's just that the inheritance get weird very fast lah.
Mm.
But now this is default, so you don't have to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want the day that's self obvious that we don't have to deal with it. Then the problem now is that how do you make sure that the variable don't jump around? I mean, you can. It's because function already have scope, or Python already have function in scope already anyway. So I don't know.
Mm.
I go and let them figure out. But self is
Yeah.
just weird for me. I
Mm-hmm.
understand to implement that is easier, but there's that. With that said, enough complaint. I
Yeah.
hope
Oh,
I'm
I just
hoping
want
that
to show one more as well. Oh, are you going to show something as well?
no, hopefully I'm going to review this book next time.
Yeah.
This next time.
Yeah. Now, can you search for heartbeat? I want to show like an interesting way I did the
Yep,
animation. One more.
this one.
Yep, this one. So
Okay.
you see, there's an animation of like a spinning.
Hmm.
I mean, a spinning stick, and it
Correct.
just modulus the time
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah, yeah,
four,
yeah, yeah.
and then now it like it rotates every second,
Yep, yep.
so you can see
Uh,
it's rotating. So it's an interesting way I did the animation.
yeah, you can do that.
It's probably
I hope.
one of the reasons why it's slow as well because this is also firing with the sync IO.
Yeah,
But then you need to know that you're not hanging, right? You didn't
yep,
silently crash, so you need
correct.
a heartbeat for that. But yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm also worried about the interval. Probably I do not know what's the minimum time. Oh well,
Oh, if
that's
it's zero, it's like as soon as possible, so that because you want it
right.
like I mean, if it's what they call this, like the buttons, for example, right? If you want it
Yep.
to run as soon as you can, then uh,
Hmm.
like it has to be. So here's the thing: the problem is the button has like a few milliseconds delay before it actually registers because of the
Correct.
like it's just not catching the
Hmm.
the state. So that's an issue. Like I would have done it as interrupts, but I don't know how to do interrupts in Circuit Python because
Correct.
that's usually how you would do it in like C or something. Like it's very
Yeah,
important.
correct.
I
And
need a button press to register. Just interrupt whatever loop you are in and handle this. But I don't know
yeah,
how to do that in Circuit Python.
yeah, correct. It makes sense. It makes sense. Interrupt exists for a reason actually, and also I suspect that I wonder if you push the limit of your microcontroller with so many events, but I can't tell. To be honest, I can't really tell. You know what I mean? It could be
Mm-hmm.
that, but it could be really because the language. It's not the language per se. It's more like CircuitPython behavior on this because the priority for them is on something to work first. They are not in the industrial scene yet. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
which is why probably they don't care as much. Probably soon because there is agents government agencies like ISA that actually interested in MicroPython on CubeSats. So probably it works. I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
so is the competition finished
Yep.
or what?
No, no. Next week, I think the deadline is June 25. So this
Okay.
weekend, and then I think they have 1 week for like the results. But I
Okay.
like so it's still quite early on. So I submitted early because I just wanted to finish it. Uh,
Yep.
then I've only seen two other submissions. If you search for PyPy on, you'll find them. One is the robot light tracking thing, or
Hmm.
not really a robot, but like a remote
Yep.
controlled vehicle. Uh, and the other is like a button that says meow, so something like that. You can search for MakerPy Party on YouTube. to see it. Like if you go there and then click on the hashtag, it will do that.
Yeah, right. Okay lah. With that said, it's a bit late. I need to go to office tomorrow. So hope to see you guys
Okay.
next week, and probably hopefully next week we have the full crew, and hopefully Tristan actually win lah. I think he will, looking at the quality of
We
project.
won't know till 2 weeks from now, so we'll see.
All right, all
I
right.
don't know
Thanks
if
for
I'll
listening.
win as well. We'll see. Okay, bye. See you
It's
next
fun.
week.
It's fun. Yeah.
Mm.
Bye. I am going to end broadcast now.